chronological literature reviews versus thematic literature reviews. What is the difference between them? How are they structured? In this video, I'm going to break that down and give you examples of each one. If we've not met before, hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley, and I've been supporting social science graduate students for the last 20 years. How do I structure my literature review is one of the most common questions that students ask me. And my answer to that question, always and quite annoyingly, is that depends. I'll get to what it depends on later, but for now, let's take a look at the two structures we're examining in this video. Firstly, a chronological structure. This approach involves organising the literature based on a timeline of when the research was conducted or when a set of theories were developed. You start with the earliest studies or theories and progress towards the most recent ones. This type of structure helps you to demonstrate the historical progression of knowledge in your field, and it helps you examine how the theories and how the ideas have developed and evolved over time. It's particularly useful when there's a specific chronology. There's a very defined order in how things have developed over time in your field. So where you can demonstrate the development of research trends or the development of theory, a chronological structure is something you might want to consider. Let's take a look at an example. So here we have our example topic, the evolution of consumer behaviour, a historical analysis. A chronological literature review on this topic could explore how theories and studies on consumer behaviour have developed over time, starting from the early psychological theories to the more contemporary perspectives. The literature review might begin with the general foundational works by researchers like Maslow and the hierarchy of needs, which explored human motivations and fulfillment, and perhaps maybe some of Freud's work about human desires and human drives. It might then move on to look at key studies and theories that emerged in the field of marketing and consumer psychology throughout the 20th century. That could include research on consumer decision-making models, attitude formation and change, brand loyalty, and the influence of advertising. Then it might progress to look at how consumer behaviour research evolved in response to societal changes and technological advancements in the 1980s through to the early 2000s. So thinking about things like the rise of the internet and of post-industrial society. So it might cover shifts from traditional marketing approaches to more nuanced understandings of consumer attitudes and values and lifestyles. It might end by looking at research in the last 10 years, and that can include discussions on digital marketing strategies, online consumer behaviour, the role of social media influencers, and the application of neuroscience in understanding consumer decision making. So this is a really good example of where a chronological literature review might apply. So we're beginning with the early psychological theories and we're progressing to the more contemporary theories that are looking at marketing and consumer behaviour in the age of the digital, the age of the internet. It helps us see the main trends and shifts and progressions and particular periods of time in which there was a seismic shift. So that was the chronological structure. Before we get on to the thematic one, I just want to say, if you are finding this video helpful or useful in any way whatsoever, give it a quick thumbs up because that makes a huge difference in ensuring other people can find it too. Okay, so next up, a thematic structure. When you're taking a thematic approach to structuring your literature review, what you're doing is organising the material by theme, concept or idea. And all of those are things that are going to emerge from the studies as you're looking at them. You identify key themes or issues that are relevant to your research topic and you group the literature accordingly. This kind of structure can be incredibly useful when there's a very wide and diverse range of literature around your topic and you want to draw out common themes and common issues and bring together quite an eclectic mix of literature, highlighting the specific themes that cut across all of the studies. Let's look at another example. So say we were looking at the topic of youth homelessness and examining the causes, the consequences and interventions. This literature review might have a section on socio-economic factors that contribute towards youth homelessness, such as poverty, unemployment, housing affordability and family instability. It would review the key theories and the empirical findings related to the relationship between things like socio-economic disadvantage and homelessness among young people, as well as debates surrounding structural inequalities and systemic barriers. So that would be your section on socio-economic factors. That is one of your key themes. You might then have a theme on mental health issues, examining the prevalence of mental health disorders amongst homeless young people, the impact of trauma and adverse childhood experiences, and the challenges in accessing mental health services. It might also discuss interventions aimed at addressing the mental health needs of homeless young people, such as trauma-informed care and supportive housing models. You might then have another theme that looks at policy interventions, where you're analysing the literature on policy responses to youth homelessness, looking at things like legislative frameworks, government initiatives, and community-based interventions. You might review the effectiveness of these different policy approaches in preventing and addressing youth homelessness, as well as looking at the debates surrounding housing first strategies, youth-specific services, and the role of advocacy and social justice movements. Then the literature review might include a theme exploring intersectional issues, looking at how various elements of people's identities overlap and combine to create particular vulnerabilities or particular experiences of youth homelessness, such as race, gender, sexual orientation, experiences of the care system and immigration status. How do they all interact within the context of youth homelessness? Finally, the literature review might have a section that synthesises the key findings and insights from the literature across the previous themes, identifying the common patterns, the gaps in knowledge, and the implications for policy, practice, and future research. And it might emphasise the need for holistic or multidimensional approaches to addressing youth homelessness, which take into account all of the complex causes and consequences that you've uncovered in the literature review. This thematic approach allows for a nuanced explanation of all the complexities around youth homelessness and the various factors that contribute towards its persistence and its exacerbation. Now, how do you know what structure is the most appropriate one for your PhD? So we're going back to the question that I get asked all of the time here, aren't we? Which one should I choose? Which structure should I follow in my literature review? And my annoying response to that question, it depends. Well, here are some of the things that it depends on. Firstly, common practice in your discipline. Generally, how are literature reviews structured in your field? Is there a preference for a particular way of doing it? Do you need to stick rigidly to that, or is the scope to do things a bit differently? You'll need to chat to your supervisor about this, but it might be that your specific area of research does necessitate a slightly different structure to the norm. But the key point that I'm trying to make here is that you need to be aware of what the common practice is in your discipline and whether or not you should be following that, whether there's a good case for going, yep, I should stick to that, or whether there's a good case for going, I should go slightly outside the lines here. Another thing to consider is the nature of your research topic and your research aims. Consider whether your topic as a whole lends itself more to a thematic or a chronological structure for the literature review. What is it that you're trying to contribute towards the knowledge in your field? And what is the best way to approach the literature to begin that process? For example, if you're aiming to investigate the evolution or development of a particular concept or idea or theory over time, then a chronological structure might be the most appropriate one. Conversely, if your research is aiming to explore different perspectives or different approaches towards a complex issue, a thematic structure might be better for you. Yet another thing to consider is the scope and the breadth of the literature itself. If there's a very large body of literature spanning several decades, then you might find that a chronological structure might be the most appropriate one for you because it's going to enable you to trace the historical development of the literature. If the literature is diverse, if it's contained within a shorter period of time, if it encompasses various themes or perspectives, then you might find a thematic structure is more appropriate. So the three things to consider when you are making a decision about what structure to follow. Firstly, common practice in your discipline. Secondly, the nature of your research topic. And thirdly, the scope and the breadth of the literature around that topic. So to recap, in this video, we've looked at a chronological and a thematic structure for a literature review. And we've considered some of the factors that you need to take into account when you're deciding how to structure your literature review. It's also worth me saying that chronological and thematic are just two ways of structuring your literature review. There are others, and if you want me to make more videos on those, please let me know in the comments. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.